Keating.
Here.
Bob Ross. Bill Flanagan.
Here.
Catherine Kratz. General Lee Baxter. Superintendent Hopkins.
All right, thank you, and we have a quorum. All right, and did we comply with the Open Meetings Act? All right, very good. Then board members and all of the guests who are with us today, would you please rise and join me with a Pledge of Allegiance, a salute to the Oklahoma flag, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of Oklahoma. Its symbols of peace unite all people. Thank you. Please be seated. Well, good morning to the honorable board members who are here with us today and to all of our guests who have joined us. We have many leaders in education who are also with us today, which we will have as part of our agenda today. But I want to welcome everyone who's here with us, and we also have members that are joining us through our online access as we have live streaming now. So for all of those that might be there, thank you for joining us too. Let me begin with a few announcements, board members. We have some exciting news that is coming. This was announced earlier in this month of May. It is the Trauma Summit, which is going to be coming up in the fall. You know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and it was the fitting time to announce something that our educators, both leaders in buildings as principals, but also our teachers in classrooms, have shown a great desire to have more trauma-informed instruction training. And as you know, we go through different communities in the summer with our Engage OK program for professional development. And these opportunities are provided in a lot of different areas. The number one most attended and sought out professional development in each location is the training in trauma-informed instruction. With 7,000 attendees last year, we took that as a great indication of new professional development that is needed to extend to teachers, and not to just the teacher, but to the leaders in districts, their principals, as well as lead teachers. So we have joined forces with several community leaders, I'll identify them, to have a summit in the fall, October the 2nd, at the Cox Convention Center. It starts here. Trauma-Informed Instruction is the name of the summit. In partnership with state agencies, tribal nations, and nonprofits that serve children and families, the State Department of Education's in-depth event will target educators who are often the first to encounter trauma in individual children. So some of our key speakers will include Casey Gwinn, who is the president of Alliance for Hope International, a former city attorney for San Diego. Gwinn is a national leader in family justice initiatives, and he came at the recommendation of our next speaker, Oklahoma County District Attorney David Prater. This is a passion of his, it's a passion of mine, and it is one where we both are very grateful that Casey Gwinn, a colleague of his, is going to be joining us to bring his message of how to better instruct students, but also break the cycle of trauma in young people. Terry White, the Commissioner of State's Mental Health and Substance Abuse Service Agency, will also address the group, as well as our Office of Juvenile Affairs Executive Director, Stephen Buck, who is, again, our Secretary of Health. And then Steve Garner of the Child Trauma Academy. The retired North Dakota public school teacher conducts workshops with educators on trauma-informed practices and is highly recommended by those who are familiar with the work and training. So we're very excited to be able to give a preview of some of that work again this summer, where we will continue to provide the training. But we also know this needs to be in-depth at the district and school level, and we will work to bring as many as we can to October 2nd to the summit. All right, so we have some moments to brag on students that have come to our attention this month. And one, I had the pleasure of meeting and giving him a send-off on his way to DC. Oklahoma's Geography B champion. Dylan Wheeler is an 8th grader. He attends Epic Charter School. I had the opportunity to meet with Dylan here in my office last week before he went to represent the state of Oklahoma. It was his first time to travel by plane, and he got to go to DC for the first time competing. His family refers to him as the human GPS. And they have some funny stories about him in a car seat being able to direct where the most efficient path would be. So this is something he has had identified as a particular talent at an early age. We also know that he was able to represent Oklahoma very well. I will let you know that the winning question, and by the way, the winner is from the state of California, but I thought I would try it out and see how you do. I won't put anyone on the spot. All right, so the winning question was, which South America country has a population size most similar to Lebanon? Which South? Very good. Anyone need to phone a friend? Oh, who said that? Michael. Yes, you got it. Nice job. All right, Dr. Tamborski. Very, very good. Congratulations. The answer was Paraguay. All right, nice. Okay, very good. Well, the other is yesterday's events at the University of Tulsa in their big arena. There we assembled about 750 people, all there to celebrate some of the top achievement of 7th graders on the ACT with the Duke Tip Talent Search. And we saw about 300 I'm not sure if I have Dr. Koss in the room. She was there. I was going to verify the exact number. But 7th grade Oklahoma students who have scored already at a very hot...
She's peering around.
There you are. Do you remember? Oh, she is standing up. Yes.
We had over 300 who qualified
Okay.
for state recognition and about 150 or so.
Okay, very good. And so about 300, though, qualified with the high level of scoring that's required in all the different subject areas in order to receive that recognition. And that's really exciting. They were from all over the state. We saw some students from Lawton as well, General Baxter. And we had certainly students in Tulsa in the variety of the Oklahoma City metro area, but all sorts of schools from across the state, traveling all over, even from as far out as the Panhandle. So we're very excited to know that these students have an opportunity to be recognized, and we would love to see more students able to do what they...
Is this the first time this has been done?
No, this is done annually.
Oh,
yes. Yeah, annually, and it is done all across the country. So Oklahoma has a day each year recognizing students that have done this, have actually accomplished this achievement. We did have one student who was present that had a perfect 36 score as a 7th grader on the ACT. So, very proud of him. All right. So,
How
yeah.
many, you know about how many took the test?
That's a great question. I wouldn't know that off the top of my head. Do you know that, Dr. Koss, how many took the test?
I I don't know for Oklahoma, you know, it's several thousand across the US.
Okay.
Yeah. You are invited to take it, if I recall. So there's it's based on some preliminary indicators. Then they offer the test. And there is even an opportunity for fifth graders as well. So we have seen that. We encourage that anytime you get the chance. We want to encourage students to attempt that. So finally, in terms of progress and news, I want to share with you something that we just learned. I believe the report was released, was it just yesterday? Yesterday or the day before. The organization called Education Next, their student performance report was released. In 2015, Oklahoma ranked 47th in rigor for our state proficiency standards. This year, Oklahoma ranks 17. So this shows tremendous gains for our state in terms of our expectations for students. And remember, that change was led by Oklahoma educators. I'm very proud of that accomplishment. And we received an overall grade of A for Oklahoma. So congratulations for all the hard work that was accomplished in setting those high standards and goals. The full report is available on a link with an interactive map, and it is educationnext.org. All right. And this is where you can see the high expectations student performance analysis for 2017 on proficiency standards. All right, well, we
should just take the opportunity to remind the legislature that you really can have Oklahoma standards that are more complete and better than standards produced for Oklahoma by people who aren't involved in education here. A lot of those guys need to be convinced of that. This is very convincing, and just applaud everybody that was involved in that process. It's first rate.
Thank you.
And the legislature needs to understand how well this has gone.
And those who are, I think, question at times, you know, the desire of educators to set a high bar. My goodness, we're not making any excuses for our past or for where students might be. We want to meet them where they are, but we have high bar set, and that's led by educators, and that is a message I want everyone to know. And it's been recognized now at a national level, and it is a wonderful thing to receive an A. Now, we've got to provide the supports to achieve it. That's the key. We have the goal, now we need the support to help bring and lift everyone to that standard. So,
So that would be another message.
That's
to
right.
The legislature, 2 in a row.
That's right. All right, so we also have some excellence right here in the department. Employee of the Month. I would love to introduce to you the month of May, Shauna Keene. Shauna, would you go to the podium while I talk about you? Shauna, all right. She is a behavioral program specialist in our special education department, by the way. She began working for the department in June 2015, and a colleague has said this about you, Shauna, all right? Okay. I nominate Shauna for Employee of the Month because she represents the State Department of Education with a high level of professionalism. She is memorable in the way she brightens up a room, and she is a role model to all, treating everyone the way they would want to be treated. Another person said, she treats new staff with respect and kindness. She is very approachable to troubleshoot ideas, problem solve difficult situations, and provide feedback with a high level of respect for the individual. Anyone who has met Shauna will remember her because she makes every individual feel important. I love the caliber of your expertise, but love just as much, if not more, the way you treat people. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. A little picture. All right, there we go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're so glad you're on our team.
Thank you.
All right. Now, this is how we get our steps.
Just wait.
Yeah. All right. So now, board members, we do not have any superintendents that are first-year superintendents that signed up today on our roster. So if you are, would you please be sure that you see our Secretary, Terry Cheadle, so we can make note of that required meeting attendance. Now, board members, we're on item number 4. 4A is an action item, discussion and possible action on the minutes of April 26, did I say that right? April 26, 2018, regular board meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Okay,
Second.
excellent. All right, any discussion, questions about this? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
General Baxter?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Superintendent Hopkins?
Yes. All right, thank you. Motion carries. Now, board members, we would love to now answer one of the questions. I think this was a very important point that board member Kathy Franks brought to our attention and wanted to talk more about. This is an area of great, I think, priority and interest around the state around school safety. The board had asked that we provide a report on what that looks like in the state, and I'm going to ask Jason Pittenger, Executive Director for the Office of Accreditation, to present on school safety plans that are required of all schools.
Well, good morning, Superintendent Hoffmeister, honorable members of the board. On the heels of Santa Fe, no one in this room needs to be reminded how important security is for kids. And so in reviewing this, I don't know, it was kind of tough. You know, I've been in a school, I was in a school not too long ago, and just, it hit home reviewing a lot of this, so.
Jason, you want to remind the board where you were prior to coming here?
I do. I was principal at Edmond North High School for 6 years, and I was assistant principal there for 4 years prior to that. There was a year I was principal, we had a pretty good bomb scare, and going through that personally was very difficult, challenging. No one cares more about kids than the teachers and leaders in the schools. You know, every time you go to work as a school leader, you never know what potentially could happen, and there's nothing that gets under your skin more than risking the lives of kids. It's something I'm passionate about. So, you know, there's plenty of resources and expertise in Homeland Security and the School Security Institute. Whoever wants to push for this to be a priority and important, I would love to be a part of that and lead that charge. You know, I had to go to a couple of funerals as a principal too, and that's not easy. Keeps you up at night, makes you wonder what you could have done different to help the kids not land in that position. Watching their friends and families cope with loss is difficult. Counselors grieving in schools is difficult. It's something no principal ever wants to go through. So when we look at this security requirements in this PowerPoint, it's important. And I would like to believe that every principal in every high school, middle school, junior high, and elementary is as passionate about it as I am with it being important, because our most precious resource is in our schools. So having said that, let's talk about the requirements. There's two types of drills required for schools. There's security drills and safety drills. The security drills, there's 4 that they have to do per year, so 2 per semester. One of those has to be within the first 15 days, calendar days of the school year. They're typically centered around threats, man-made threats. So we're not talking about natural disasters so much as we are man-made threats. When you schedule these drills, they need to be varied throughout the course of the school day. You can't just schedule them at the end of the school day every year or every semester. They need to be various times during the day. In fact, you can't schedule two of the same period during the day, same time during the day. That has to be varied. They have to conform to written plans as outlined in 63 OS 681, and that's more of a fallout, natural disaster type statute. There's some words in there, but it does include man-made disasters as well. It says everyone participates, including law enforcement. The difference of levels of participation, it could be as simple as getting on a radio and radioing dispatch at the local law enforcement office. It could be incorporating a school resource officer. It could be incorporating an entire police department. Typically, incorporating an entire police department doesn't happen during a school year, because if you have 11 police cars at a school, that tends to raise a lot of flags, and it's hard to explain drills when that's happening. But they do actively engage law enforcement in participation. Questions before I move on? Yes, sir.
How does a school decide if they're going to have a resource officer?
Great question. I'm sure there's a lot of different factors that would be considered in determining that. I don't know the answer to that. I would assume it's a local decision, but I'm certainly sure I could find out.
Go to the front.
So I would say first and foremost, the unfortunate piece of that is the financial piece that goes along with having a resource officer. And I know that schools have had to make that tough decision whether to have a resource officer or whether to have a kindergarten teacher. And so those are the tough decisions our schools are having to make. A lot of times there's some partnerships with the cities and whatnot. My previous school, we didn't have necessarily a resource officer, but our police officers were in the building twice a day in every one of our buildings, and smaller towns, so they were able to manage it that way. So, but again, it is a local decision on where they think the priority needs to be at.
You happen to know, Jason, when 63 OS 681 was passed into law?
I have it right here, so I can answer that question. I could tell you when it was amended last. It was amended last in 2013.
Do you happen to know what that amendment was? Because interesting, in 681, there's no specific language that results or that addresses the specific problems that the schools are currently facing, such as, active shooters. This is more about, if there's an earthquake, where do we go? It's not addressed, to my knowledge, very specifically in terms of what the real threat is that's facing schools.
Yes, sir, you're absolutely correct. It doesn't address it specifically. It does include plans and procedures in place for protecting students, faculty, administrators, and visitors from natural and man-made disasters and emergencies. So you're absolutely correct. It doesn't specifically talk about armed assailants or those kinds of things.
It needs to. And the drills, which are all well-intended, we really need to go much further in what we require to be done in terms of security drills and safety drills, in my opinion. And we need to focus them on very specific areas, but.
It's a conversation that we could have with Ms. Thompson, I'm sure. Okay.
There ought to be a number of people who would advocate for that.
I would agree with you. Other questions before we move on?
Have we ever looked into working with Homeland Security on getting surplus equipment for schools, like metal detectors and things like that? They're constantly upgrading their systems, and I'm just wondering.
To my knowledge,
surplus?
Yes, to my knowledge, I don't know, but I do know that Jennifer Newell at the School Security Institute, I have a great working relationship with her. I could make a phone call and find out if that's possible, if we've ever done it in the past. I can find out the answer to that. But to my knowledge, I don't know. If anybody cabinet level wants to chime in. But I can find out for sure.
General Baxter, to your point, these statutes were amended, as Jason said, in 2013. Part of the amendments, to my knowledge, were to remove the word intruder from the statute. The reasons for that are unknown to me at this time, but I'm happy to find out.
And it may also be that it may be from within, and they wanted to broaden the thinking. I don't know, I'm speculating, that we not only think of someone coming from outside the building that is a threat.
One other thing, is there anything in here about these exercises? So, the time is so short when you have the actual episode.
Okay.
The time for reaction it's in minutes, not 5 minutes.
Correct.
10 minutes.
Right.
The time span is so
In 4
tight.
minutes.
And so, is there any focus on those circumstances? Because that's when the most damage is done.
Not to my knowledge, in all my research for this presentation, I didn't see anything specific to time requirements. I do know that for fire drills, they do time the evacuation. That's the only thing that I've seen with regard to time.
But I think that's important that we focus, when we start trying to bring all these ideas together, I think that's something you can't leave off the table.
I agree with you. So the security drills are more man-made, tied to man-made issues. The safety drills, there's 6 required per year, so that's 3 per semester. This includes your fire and tornado drills. The fire and tornado, one fire has to be done within 15 days in the semester. The tornado drills have to be done specifically in the month of September and specifically in the month of March. Okay, so they can't be done in any other month. They have to be executed in those 2 months per statute. Remaining 2 safety drills can be a recommendation from school safety committee. For instance, if you've got a school that's next to some railroad tracks and you want to do a hazmat drill or an evacuation drill based on a disaster on a train, from a train next to your school building, that could be something that your safe school committee could propose, and leadership could sit around the table, identify experts in the field, develop a drill, and execute that drill as one of those 2 remaining drills. Okay? The records need to be preserved for at least 3 years on site and at the district office. The fire marshal can come and request to see your fire drill documentation. So that's quite the impetus to hang on to those. Those reports are to be filed with the School Security Institute. They fill those out online, and what happens is the School Security Institute sends them a response email that those drills have been submitted. So when RAOs go out to check to make sure that these drills have been done, they ask to see that email from the School Security Institute. Questions?
Well, this whole thing just bothers me. It really does, because I have a little different perspective on this. I mean, I'm not sure where the expertise is. I mean, I understand your background and experience, but you're not a security guy.
Right.
You're an accreditation guy. So your role in this is to go out to the schools and you check to see if they're doing what they're told to do. The part we don't have is whether what they're told to do are the right things.
Right.
And that's not what you do, and neither does anybody else. So we have no expertise in this matter, as far as I know, within the department. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I don't think we do.
We've partnered
I
with-
mean, you're not claiming to be that. I don't mean
Right.
that at all. you
We've
know.
partnered with the School Security Institute, and they are the experts.
Yeah.
Their website is a treasure trove of information, resources to afford administrators at the local level an opportunity to look at best practice, a resource they could call Jennifer at any time. Jennifer, when I was principal at North,
I think the
Jennifer
next
came
slide
out to the school building multiple times to inform our drill development practice.
And I'm not sure how much it is maybe appreciated in the board of how extensive the training is that occurs in some of the school districts. I can only speak from my experience, but every year the school district where my children attended had full, like a drill that included patients, students with at the local hospitals, the ambulance, fire, all of the various emergency first responders came onto campus and there would be a particular type of scenario, active shooter. It could have been, like you described, a various threat with hazmat. And there was a full staging that occurred with student participants and where they evacuate students, how they do this. This happens every single year. It involves hundreds of people. And so that is the kind of thing you only know until you know how it will play out when you actually walk through with live individuals.
Yep.
And this is not something that people are just going to risk not knowing. There's levels of preparation, but you can look at Santa Fe and know that in 4 minutes' time, 12 people were dead. And from everything I have heard, they did everything correctly. In terms of the drills, the plans, the work, we
But
have
yeah.
a lot of planning and preparation that must always be a priority. It is the same as when we strap ourselves into a car and our children in seatbelts and then pray to drive defensively and protect them. But we should always be looking for ways to stay ahead of threats and also minimize risk. Part of that is when it is our individuals that are known to the school. And we know that support for students we have long identified that are troubled or need support is another aspect to this,
Yeah,
not just hardening a target.
I don't argue any of that, but what you're talking about is practice, it's drills. It's how we pretend we're gonna react to situations. And that's far different, I can assure you, than when something actually happens. Now, having said that, I'm not complaining about that or talking about it. I'm talking about hardware. I'm talking about software. I'm talking about things that can make a classroom and a school more physically secure. I believe it's Hilton, Oklahoma, little community, has put shelters in their classrooms, and they're sized to the size of the class. And if there's an incident of some kind, all those children, elementary school children, are taken into this shelter in the classroom, and it's not possible for it to be breached by gunfire. Totally safe. Schools that I've gone around to, a big problem is, you know, teachers can't lock the door from the inside. There's no way to communicate with the principal if there's a situation, and that's a matter of an $8 wireless device. And so all of those kinds of things, we don't know what we're talking about, I don't think. And we don't have a program that says we need to change physically some of the things we're doing. Metal detectors, some places, yeah, some places, no. You know, I don't know. Do you have metal detectors? No, you have metal detectors. Well, god dang, you know, metal detector. So I just don't think we're looking at the right stuff. We're saying, all right, you guys have to do this, and we're gonna check it 4 times a year. But they don't know what to do.
Yeah, and so the answer is not one thing.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with anything you said on the drills and the seriousness of the drills. I'm not decrying that, but there's just things that physically have to happen to make classrooms more
Yes.
secure and schools more secure.
Yeah.
And why don't we have them? Well, largely because they're not important. See, we
Well,
don't,
I
don't mean it's not
disagree with you
important
on
from the
that.
resourcing standpoint.
Yeah.
It's gotta be a priority, you know.
I think we are sadly asked to make choices
Exactly right.
that we
yeah.
shouldn't have to make.
No, I'm not criticizing
Yep.
anything. I'm saying it's a
Yep.
resource issue in most districts. And I'll bet if Matt Holder had, you know, had the resources for metal detectors, he'd have had metal detectors. Well, you know, my view, if somebody wants to go shoot up a school, they're likely to go to one that doesn't have a metal detector, you know, as opposed to one that does. So why wouldn't we have metal detectors? It's just an example. So, you know, bulletproof glass, you know.
Even designing, use your microphone. Even designing buildings, entranceways, and most of the new facilities that are getting built
Right.
are locking down things where it's much tougher to get in. But a lot of our schools across the state, you know, are 50-year-old buildings that are open access, and offices may not even be at the front door. They may be in the middle of the building.
Yeah, I just think we ought to find a real advocate for this in the legislature that will pick this up and start working on it before it's too late, you know.
in addition to what Lee's talking about, you know, when they're in a shooter type situation, you know, by the time somebody's in there shooting people, it's too late. You know, in Florida, there were all kinds of indications of this guy being crazy and likely to cause trouble. You know, I reflect back when I was an assistant U.S. attorney, there was a guy that said he was going to kill the president, and the president was coming that weekend. And I found Oklahoma law was just atrocious on terms of the person was mentally ill, and you couldn't, you know, I incarcerated him for 5 days until the president was gone, and that's all I could do. Beyond that, he was not triable, we have to have some mechanism on people that are dangerous mentally ill to be able to take care of them in a way in which law enforcement, even if the FBI had reacted wonderfully, they couldn't have done anything for somebody that was mentally ill and dangerous in the school. Now, they did pass a law in Florida that to be able to take away the guns of the guy that, somebody that's declared mentally ill. And I'm curious whether Oklahoma went ahead and did that. I think that's worthwhile to have a, you know, have a mental health court be able to take away the guns. I'm interested in the school and the people in the school being knowledgeable enough to report to this safety committee people that might be dangerous way in advance of some shooting incident and preventing these things happening and being knowledgeable of who to call and having law enforcement knowledgeable enough of what to do, what protocol to do, and having the laws of the state of Oklahoma sufficient so that if somebody is mentally ill, you can take their guns and you can presumably do something with them. This guy, I called his psychiatrist and he said, well, if he's on his meds, he's wonderful. But if he's off his meds, he could end up shooting somebody. Well, that's unacceptable that you have a system where somebody's just on the street and there's nothing you can do to take care of them. So we need to have some better laws, but we also need to have the school informed so they can inform law enforcement in advance of, you know, once they arrive on the scene with a gun, it's really too late.
Right.
It's minimizing your losses, but it's losses regardless.
So, Mr. Price, General Baxter, this next slide may kind of lead us into a couple of things that speak to your points. The schools have to have a written plan. That written plan has to include protecting students, faculty, and visitors. It's reviewed annually, and it's supposed to be sent to local law enforcement agencies. It's not sent to the State Department, but it's sent to local law enforcement agencies. They should have a copy of that. Here, I think, speaks to General Baxter's point, is that you may have individual school districts in Oklahoma that have very, very passionate individuals about ensuring the safety of students. They may seek out additional resources, FEMA, the Federal Department of Education. They may look and seek out those resources when they develop their plans because it's something they're passionate about due to personal experience or otherwise. How do we guarantee that same level of passion about maintaining the safety of students across the state? I think as a department, speaking for the Accreditation Division, our RAOs can certainly start asking questions about these plans. How nice would it be to maybe take a look at a few of them and then ask the School Security Institute to take a look at a few of them to make sure that we're doing something that at least resembles best practice. Is that possible? I don't know, but I would like to pursue that. I would like to pursue it in conversation, look at the burden it might place on school districts to do that. But it's certainly something that they're already creating plans, so we're not going to ask them to recreate another plan. They should already have one, but they're not required to send it to us. But I would love to take a look at them, because we might be able to offer some resources to say, hey, go back and look at your plan and maybe look at these 5 bullets to ensure that these best practices are implemented in your plan.
Or is this website that you mentioned, is that available to all the superintendents in
Yes,
the
sir.
state of Oklahoma?
Yes, it's available to anyone.
And they know the website?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, really, why wouldn't your office require the ability to look at all the plans?
We have the ability. We can ask for them. RAOs can ask for them, and we can see them.
I really think with what's going on that we don't have anything better to do than to make sure that we have the security.
I would agree with you.
And I think that General Baxter's, if the primary thing is lock the doors, then with sponsors or with people in the community, that shouldn't be an expense that is just
Sure.
Nobody can
The school's
touch.
burden.
But I would like to see, minimum standards for all the schools. And if it is locking the doors, and it may well be locking the doors, that we ought to be able to, the
Right.
teacher should be able to lock the door.
I don't know that we have any minimum standards in statute. Mr. Clark might be able to address that, but I do know that we could certainly engage in conversations with Jennifer at the School Security Institute as to what steps we can take to provide best practice to schools, to look at their plans and give them feedback on their plans. That's something that I don't think would be burdensome to districts, and obviously with superintendent's approval, come up with something to raise awareness with regards to these plans. They're already written, they have to write them. So certainly taking a look at them and providing best practice based on feedback from the School Security Institute would probably be a great first step.
Well, maybe you could get with her and then come
I will
back
do
in a
that.
couple months.
Yeah, if they're already producing the plan,
Yeah.
just sending it to us is not a burden. And you may find some innovative things in some of the plans that you may send out to other districts saying, hey, these are some great ideas that came from other districts.
Well, I'll certainly reach out to her and engage her in some conversations about what we can do.
Thank you. All right, let's keep going.
So this is just a copy of the compliance sheets that RAOs take out to the districts. The top one is a district compliance sheet, it's number 10. The districts are essentially certifying that they comply with this requirement. So that's the district compliance sheet. The bottom one is a school compliance sheet. So there's the drills listed where they basically say that, yes, I am doing what the statute requires. And then we ask for the documentation in the email sent to the School Security Institute. And then they also document all their drills to keep on site for 3 years and then to send to the district office for 3 years as well.
Just a question, and it has to do with this. A few minutes ago, you made the statement, well, gosh, wouldn't it be good if we could actually read some of these and kind of check on them? Well, doesn't this say that that's what the RAO is supposed to be doing now? I mean, in my question, I don't mean to be unfair.
Sure.
Is this a yes or no answer? And the guy says, okay, where's your plan? And the guy says, right here. So he puts a check in the box and then he goes and checks the fire extinguishers. That's not what this requires if you read it. Your own thing requires them to know what's inside that document. And I wonder if they do. Do they do that?
The drills are evidence that they have a plan and the plan's executed. I don't know the degree to which the RAOs look through and scrutinize the plans. Currently, that is not common practice for the RAOs to scrutinize the plan or even review the plan.
Do they check with the local emergency management organizations within the district?
Again, the district is certifying that they're compliant with that requirement.
So,
So the answer is no. So we're just going by and we're not checking anything. We're just putting a check in the box and moving on, right? You got a plan? Yeah, it's here. Okay.
Jason, if I can interject here just real quickly and say two things I think are relevant to this conversation. Number one is this is a minor snapshot of the compliance checklist. I believe it's 18 pages or so. The second thing is we certainly have the authority and do spot check items on this checklist. I don't think it would be possible to check every plan and go to every emergency response institution in every community, but certainly there are spot checks that take place to look for things that are, A, are they being done, and B, are there innovations within these plans that may be shared across the state.
You know, I think it comes down to, we got 514 different institutions. It has the primary responsibility. I think that each one is by statute required to have a plan, and we should do everything we can to help them have the best plan possible, because each building, each school district is different. And so I think if we just develop the ability, and also, because that interest is still at the school district.
Right.
The superintendent is the primary responsibility. And so nothing will be perfect, but things are going to be a lot better than what they are now if we raise this on the priority list. And I think that is something that we can help without being a burden, is provide them information that they don't have to go some, they don't even know it's there, the help and expertise that we already have available. And so I just encourage us to really open up that line of communication where they know that information is there, and act as a partner instead of a compliance person. I'm a CPA, so I know what compliance is about, and we want to be a partner in these solutions and not just a compliance person. And I think that's what the general's saying too.
You know, also on this, certain persons to carry handguns or whatever, and that's a local decision. It would be nice if they told us what their local decision was and what their training requirements was, and so that we can inform other districts of what certain districts are doing, again, for their knowledge, because they may or may not want to utilize those training requirements. So, the main purpose of the state is to be able to spread knowledge and not have everybody reinvent the wheel and have everybody come up with their own training requirements that are more stringent than just a handgun license. And there may be ones coming up with ones that are real good, and we spread it around for anybody to be able to utilize it if they want it.
They are more stringent than handgun license. I think I've got 3 slides left. I think our firearms one's next. The Safe School Committee is required. Teachers, parents, administrators, students oftentimes.
So you, Jason, you think all the 515 school districts have these committees?
Yes, sir.
Well, yeah, they have to.
Yeah. And if they don't, we find out about it, we address it.
And
right
you
then
realize that accreditation means if you are not accredited, you do not receive state aid. So this is how we are able to ensure that schools are meeting a bare minimum that is set in statute, and that is the focus of the accreditation department within the agency. There are other offices that are focused on a different angle of support, but it is very critical that there are how many laws around Section 70 in school law in Oklahoma, and then there is a voluminous number of laws in federal law. All of that has to be adhered to, and it is our responsibility to check. We are down, personnel as well, and would want to see the increased capacity, not at an agency level, more at the district level, where, as as was stated by, member Flanagan, that it is an engaged community that can best protect their own schools. And we want to be resources, certainly, and make certain that they are compliant. But school safety has to be a top priority for everyone in the state. I think we all are in agreement on that. And this is just a review of what is in current law right now for this conversation.
So, Mr. Keating, we do ask for members of the Safe School Committee. We also ask for minutes of meetings that they have had in the past. I've been with RAOs when they've asked, has that committee made any recommendations to the school administration? So those are the kind of things that we verify that those committees actually are formed and that they're meeting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. They do also take up bullying. A lot of times it's just a culture of the school that this committee informs leadership on, but it is in statute. Questions? So here's the handgun statute. It's not just a simple conceal and carry license that affords a school personnel the opportunity to carry a firearm in a school. They have to be CLEAT certified. Armed security guard training is what they need to go through to be able to carry a firearm. And the local board has to adopt a policy that affords them the opportunity to do that. We don't have an official number of school districts that have this, but just asking around, there's about half a dozen, a little more than half a dozen.
I'm just saying, the ones that are adopting the policy, you might spread around the ones that are, what their requirements are and what kind of personnel they're having, so that other districts would be knowledgeable.
Yeah, that certainly could be part of our conversations. Questions here?
Well, what a brilliant piece of legislation that says, we ought to give a teacher or somebody in the school a gun, but maybe they ought to lock it up. Come on,
It has to be on their person or in a locked safe, otherwise, if they're carrying. So,
You'd think they'd know that.
yeah,
One would.
you can't go to lunch and leave it on a table.
Yeah.
Well, the School
Probably
Security
good positive.
Institute,
Yes, sir.
that's an Oklahoma institution?
Yes, sir. I think it's under the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security. Okay, questions here? Speaking of the School Security Institute, like I said earlier, Jennifer Newell, she's the contact person over there. She was in law enforcement for 15 plus years, and very, very knowledgeable, very passionate about school safety. A wealth of resources from her experience and the website that has been developed over there. Best practices, they've got drill log sheets, they've got best practices for active assailant drills. They've got a number of resources that schools can go to, anybody can go to, free of charge.
I would really dig into, with those people, what do you do if you get a tip from a student or from a teacher that somebody is threatening to go and shoot up a school? What can you do under Oklahoma law? If they're mentally ill as one instance, or if they're not mentally ill as another, what can law enforcement actually do? Can they, on a mentally ill person, you can't try them if they're mentally ill. Can you take them to, and only Oklahoma City and Tulsa have and a few other places have a court for that are geared that way.
I would have to defer that answer to law enforcement.
I would really drill down into, if you're in a rural area in Oklahoma, you may get a bunch of tips, and local law enforcement's going to throw up their hands and say, we can't do anything with this person, they're mentally ill. And we'll end up with a shooting situation, and then there'll be an uproar, we need to change the law. it'd be nice to be able to change the law before something like that ever happens. And can we take the guns from the mentally ill person? Can we do something to force the mentally ill person to take meds? Can we do something to, in those kinds of situations, if we get people to cooperate in the schools and give us that information, if it leads nowhere and law enforcement's impotent to do anything, it's going to be a disaster.
I would imagine those are topics of conversation when law enforcement groups get together. They're working as partners to address school security,
And if
just
there's
like the
no
schools
good
are.
answers to that, we ought to lobby as a group to get better answers from the legislature.
Yeah. Jennifer Newell, I understand, has the training where she goes into schools and provides that. I'm not sure if that is actually free or if there is a fee for that. I know it is free, you believe? Believe that is, so that's a resource. I know Dina Silk in our communications office has been a part of that, and it is truly amazing presentation. There are a lot of opportunities that school leaders are already availing themselves of, however, not all, probably, as we have so many brand new school superintendents as well. And we know who they are, of course, because we have a mandatory year-long training for new school superintendents. So I know that this is a piece of that training as well. Is there any more to your presentation?
Just lastly, last slide, as a part of the School Security Institute, they do offer funds to pay for various things. There's yearly grants to the schools. They have to provide an annual report, not to the State Department of Education, but it goes to the governor with regards to the grants that have been afforded to schools. And that's totally within the School Security Institute. It doesn't involve our agency in any way, shape, or
Could they
form.
just CC us, or is this some sort of a legal requirement?
I have no idea, but I'm sure
It is.
that we could ask.
Board Member Keating, it is a statutory requirement that the report be provided to the governor.
But, and we can't get one?
We certainly can. It's not in statute, to answer your question, but we could.
Yeah, well, I think we should. This is a extremely important subject right now. Yeah, I really, for me personally, I wish you'd meet with Jennifer and see if there's some things that are on her mind that maybe we should elevate.
That's the plan.
Okay.
Any questions? That concludes the slides that I have.
Thank you, Jason. We appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, it's a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, could you make sure that
Thank you.
Mrs.
I mean,
Franks
that's-
gets a
yeah.
copy of this?
She has.
Okay.
I see. Well, you know a lot more than I do about that piece. Thank you. All right, thank you, board members. And now we have item 5, public comment. No public comment on item 5. Is that accurate?
Superintendent, board members, it's been represented to me that the individuals that signed up for public comment have withdrawn their request to make public comment, so therefore there will be none.
Okay. All right. And then item 6 is the consent docket. It's a very short list this month. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
General Baxter?
Yes.
Superintendent Hoffmeister?
Yes. All right, motion carries. Thank you. Item 7, assessment and accountability has a update for us, and we'll ask Monica Daniels to please come to the podium, make a presentation for us. Do you have some slides?
Okay, thank you. Good morning to the honorable members of the board and Superintendent Hoffmeister. Thank you for having me today. My name is Monica Daniels. I'm the Assistant Executive Director of Accountability, and it's my pleasure to be here today to provide you an update on some of the things that have happened in accountability and assessments since last we spoke in January. So I'll go ahead and begin by reviewing the calendar or timeline that was presented to you all in January of this year. I do want to let you know that this calendar has been recognized by CCSSO, the Council of Chief State School Officers, as a national exemplar of implementation under ESSA. It was presented at a national conference and in a case study for best practices for states in transparency in the implementation of their new accountability systems. So we're very proud for that recognition. You'll see that we've highlighted certain sections of this calendar. These are milestones or tasks that have been completed since the last time we spoke in January. So there's a few things that I want to highlight. In January, the State Board of Education approved the interim targets that we presented. Additionally, the chronic absenteeism medical exemption rule was also presented and approved by the board. That is shown in February, but it was actually moved to March is when it was presented due to the rescheduling of that board meeting. I also want to highlight some of our assessment windows. So we had the WIDA assessment window, which is for English language proficiency assessments for our English Learner Indicator. We also have the OSTP, the Oklahoma School Testing Program, and college and career readiness assessments, which took place in April. At this point, I'd like to mention that while many states encountered significant technical outages during their online testing window, and these are states like Texas and New York, Tennessee, and Ohio. Oklahoma did not have any significant technical outages during our online testing, and so while they are grappling with the significant impact that has on their test results, we did not have that, so we are very excited. Additionally, we are on track with our grade 3 through 8 assessments to provide preliminary reports to districts tomorrow, which is very exciting to provide them results in such a timely manner. Additionally, those reports will be available in a dynamic reporting tool online, which is much more meaningful and accessible than what it had been in previous years where it was just a spreadsheet of data. So
just pause for a second and just let that sink in and let me ask the question, has that ever happened before in recent memory that there's been anything available this early?
I think that in previous years, maybe I believe with EOIs, there was some preliminary data, but again, I think what we're so excited about this year is that the data is going to be in an accessible, meaningful fashion. It's a dynamic reporting tool that really allows districts to run reports, not just raw data in a spreadsheet, so that they can use that in a way to make programmatic decisions before the end of the school year.
Yeah. So it's written in the contract for a June 1 return. This is, again, preliminary data, so it's not something we will have state-level data yet. Of course, that takes time after the validation window is completed. But it is very exciting that we were able to be at this place with results back to schools right away. And from those, Craig, I believe, who is the Director over Assessment, Janine, is that also is over both, Dr. Barnett. This is something we're very, very pleased because it has not happened in recent memory this early. And so with all of the challenges that occurred around the timing of the assessments, we were pleased that we were able to get that back.
And when there's no interruptions in testing because of problems, my whole life just flashed before my eyes because we've gone through so much of that. So yes, that's really great all the way around.
Yes,
you know, it's just
it is.
Great.
And each year it is part of the plan. Things will be returning back to the schools, the information much faster. A lot of this is because of the implementation of our new plan, and so this is going to also include in the future more information for families much sooner as well.
Did we reach the 95% requirement
so
throughout the state, and any school district fail the 95% test?
So we will not have finalized participation results until the end of June because we have to go through our data validation processes. I know that there were some concerns that maybe at the high school level, certain districts were unable to meet that. In terms of the state requirement, it is a cross-grade span. So I believe at this point we believe that we will have met that 95% threshold, but we won't know until the end of June.
Okay, thanks.
So additional things to highlight here is that we are collecting a lot of data right now. We've collected graduation data, we are collecting demographic and enrollment data, post-secondary opportunities and attendance data, because we have a lot of different indicators that are comprising of this new school report card more than just assessments. So we are collecting information from many different avenues right now. You'll notice that the only thing that's not highlighted in May is the OTAC meeting, our Technical Advisory Committee. That's because we're scheduled to meet with them next week. So it will be completed in May, but it's not highlighted yet because it has not been done.
And that's the Oklahoma Technical Advisory Committee, made up of those with the expertise, their PhD is in measurement and the science of assessment, that have been working with our state, and of course some of them are also on contract with other states as well. But this is what they do, and there are very few people in the country that have that level of expertise. So we do share some of them.
So again, I just want to highlight some of the major milestones that we've encountered since we spoke in January. As I showed, we have completed all proposed timeline milestones. Additionally, we have over 125 tasks that have been completed in relation to the implementation of this project. These are tasks that are monitored in our task management system internally, and they are kind of at the deeper level of what is the development and process of the implementation of this plan. So things like building tables to import files from vendors, building and testing applications that enable districts to review the data so we can be transparent and make sure they have time to validate that information. So all of those steps along the way to help build us a valid and reliable report card for a December release. So we've been working on that. We've also externally been working on communications and transparency with external stakeholders. So we have held WebEx trainings on aspects of the report card, like demographic information and the English language proficiency assessments indicator. We had over 340 people in attendance at those webinars, and they have been posted online, and we do have additional ones coming up. We have released 12 or more actually resource documents, including things like FAQs on different aspects of the report card, on data sources, training manuals for reports, all of these different aspects that help us make sure that we are being transparent with districts and supporting them, but also maintaining data integrity, so again that we have a valid and reliable report card in December. One of these resources that we've released you have in front of you. It's the school report card overview.
And by the way, these are now available for anyone online or at the table out in the hall. Board members are receiving this as well, this tool.
And it's also available on our website at the SD homepage. If you go to accountability, it's one of the first links that you'll see is the report card overview. And this just provides a very high level overview of the new accountability system and its indicators. To reiterate the message that we have been sharing since last year, we were very excited about the opportunity under ESSA to transition from a fixed to a growth mindset and really focus on growth and improvement. So the guiding principle for this system was that all students can grow and all schools can improve, and we really feel that the multiple measures of this new accountability system will help highlight that message. So this provides some general information, and as I said, it is available on our website and here today for anyone that wants that information. We hope that it will increase awareness and understanding of the new system. And then finally, to wrap up, because this is just a brief update, a reminder that there is still tremendous work to be done. We are very proud of the work that our team has put in and that our community has really provided us, but we are really just at the beginning of the collection and validation and verification process of the data. So there are a lot of things that we will be partnering with districts throughout the summer to allow them to review that data and validate that data and make sure that it is understood and accurate. So currently, we are collecting 4 different types of data simultaneously, so there is much work to be done, but we are very excited about this partnership and this opportunity. And with that, that is the end of my presentation. So if there are any questions or comments, I would be happy to address those now.
I guess how did you say this was being disseminated?
Well, we wanted to provide, since the one on the PowerPoint that's in here is small, this is something that districts will receive if they haven't already through the weekly communication we have with them. But it is posted online as well. We just thought it would be easier for you to have a larger copy to view than just on the screen. And this is just something, has this already gone to districts? I can't remember, or is it about to?
It went out in the admin newsletter, I think 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And then it's been on the
It'll
website.
also be part of the presentation at the different conferences this summer.
For Engage.
I think it's important that we get a constant flow of questions on 8F, not that this doesn't
Sure.
answer them, but just to make that
Yes.
great. Great work.
This gives total points and percentages. There's something else that gives the grade and the comparison of your school district to other districts, right?
Sure. I think you're talking about the cut points for the summative grades, and we will not have those until we have data. We want to be very data informed, and so once we have that information, then we will be able to assign what those cut points are for the grades.
Because this really doesn't tell us very much.
For schools, it tells them a lot.
I think the goal is to highlight how all of these are working together to provide that overall grade and what the weights of those are. So, you know, the significance of chronic absenteeism and post-secondary opportunities on the overall grade, that it is more than just test scores, although academics are still included because they are important.
Yes, it
They're
tells
the majority.
school in comparison to the last score they had.
Oh, it's completely different. So it's measuring different things entirely.
Oh, yeah. But what I'm saying is, you have to have a comparison of other
Right.
schools
So
or something.
that
to
is in the
know how you're
dynamic
doing.
tools that that are under development. So
This just rates the factors that
this
contribute to your grade.
this just shares the
Yeah.
more of the way the way the composite is
Yeah.
reached.
Because
Is
you wouldn't have any idea what
all of this
whether
is
a particular percentage is good or bad.
Sure. And the reporting dashboard is much larger than just the school report card. The school report card is really only a part of the dashboard, but that will have information comparing to the district and the state, and it will give a little bit more of, I think, a complete narrative to address some of those questions.
And the dashboard is part of federal law as well. So there are other components that are separate from this particular piece that are required to also be on the dashboard. So we are working with the federal compliance as well as the state plan, and working to weave it together in a way that is meaningful for communities as well as educators. All right, thank you. Thank you very much for the whole team. I know it has been an incredible amount of work done. It is just phenomenal. All right. Now, board members, we will keep moving through this. Item number 8. Dr. Miller, would you please come to the board, and we have recognition of our school administrators who are completing the Moving Up cohort for professional learning programs.
Yes, thank you, Superintendent Hoffmeister and honorable members of the board. You may recall that in December of 2017 at this board meeting, we recognized the first cohort of participants and completers from the Moving Up Leadership Skills Training Program. And today we are recognizing those who are participants and completers of Cohort 2 of Moving Up. Before I ask J.C. Smith to come to the podium, though, I do want to thank Robin Anderson, who is a member of our team here at the agency. She launched this work back in 2016 out of educator effectiveness. And though she has transitioned from educator effectiveness here at the agency to school support, she's still very much committed to and involved with this program. So now let me introduce you to our Executive Director of Teacher and Leadership Development, J.C. Smith.
So board members, just as JC is coming, just a reminder that as we know that we have a teacher shortage, many of our teachers respond to us when we ask the question of the 32,000 who have left, who have a teaching certificate in Oklahoma but are no longer teaching in an Oklahoma public school. We've asked, what were you needing? And there were a variety of answers. One of those answers was to have a principal who had their back, that would train them, that would also support them with the needs that are in every classroom. And so this comes to a place where we have to have a conversation about equipping leaders in buildings. Our principals are the highest level of instructional leader in any school, and they have a great role in creating that support for students, but also for the educators that they lead. So that is really the impetus for the need for a program to give the kind of support to those leaders who want to make a difference for kids and the teachers in their buildings. Okay.
Good morning, Superintendent Hoffmeister and honorable members of the board. It is my pleasure to join you today to recognize 20 members of Moving Up Cohort 2. This group of assistant principals and first-year principals began meeting in September of this year in Stillwater to delve into an intense, research-based professional learning opportunity that focused on principal and teacher efficacy and collaborative leadership. They have participated in face-to-face convenings, virtual training sessions, coaching opportunities with veteran administrators, and collaborated with one another through an online professional learning community. The members of this cohort have worked tirelessly to take the new information gained from Moving Up and introduce these practices into their individual schools. To provide you with the opportunity to learn more about the program from two of the Moving Up cohort participants, I would like to introduce you to the principal of Heronville Elementary in Oklahoma City, Ms. Karen Mock, and the assistant principal of Bristow High School, Ms. Tasha Beatty.
Welcome.
Good morning, Superintendent Hoffmeister and honorable board members. My name is Karen Mock. I have been in education for 28 years, but I like to say I'm a young administrator. This is only my 4th year as an administrator, my first full year as a building principal. I was lucky that the cohort group did accept me because it initially was targeted for assistant principals. So, and my district approved me going, which this was an experience that has forever left me changed. I do not look at my role as I once did. We, in this group, we were all students and teachers. And the collaboration that occurred just absolutely, I saw all of us grow throughout the span. Also, it provided us opportunity to network with people across the state. I have just this week been in contact with someone several hours away from me that was asking about something that I had mentioned and that I had tried at my school. And I also have reached out to other people. When I started my leadership this year, I knew I wanted to create a strong student voice. I knew I wanted to develop leadership at every level in my building. I knew that I wanted to highlight the strengths of my teachers. And at first it was difficult because they just wanted me to solve problems. But we have such qualified people in our building. I just kept pushing them. The cohort group helped to give me tools to do that. I had the vision, you know, you can build a house and have the vision, but if you don't have the tools and the know-how, you just can't get there. So with the tools that I learned, I persevered with my assistant principal, who's here today. We were lucky enough that we were able to do this together. And as a result, I found out what my goals were, where I wanted to build collective efficacy and collaborative leadership. And it's like, aha, that's exactly what I wanted to do. And just by happenstance, today, on my way here, I received a phone call that a student was seen 6 houses down from my school with a rifle. I was so proud of my staff, and I may get choked up, because of the Safe School Committee that we have, because of the drills we've done, because of finding strengths this year of people in my building who are able to see the whole picture, and putting them on that Safe School Committee and sharing that with everybody in the school. Because of that, my secretary had 911 called. I had a 5th grade teacher who was immediately pulling kids in that were already there on the playground. The building would have ran without me, which is exactly what I think the cohort group did. It created leaders at every level. And my hope is, for the sake of education and for students and teachers, that other people get to participate in these types of cohort groups, because I have heard from teachers this year, either directly to me or through Allison Lindsay, they have said, because of the direction we are going, they're going to give me 1 more year. See how it goes. So I've retained some really great teachers because of this cohort group, and I want to say thank you to all the coaches and the ladies that created this experience, and you, the board, for providing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's kind of hard to follow something like that. Through the cohort, you know, we were exposed to a variety of different tools and concepts to help us improve as leaders and help our schools grow. One of the topics that resonated with me was on feedback. Now, like many others, sometimes you just think feedback is just something that we just give to someone, but there's so much more about feedback that we learned from this cohort, about the cycles and the various forms of feedback. It's not just about giving, it's about receiving, and we can also take learning opportunities when we are provided with an opportunity of negative feedback. But something that really resonated and I took away was the topic of feedback. When I went back to my schools, I wanted to be able to equip my teachers, not just myself with feedback, but my teachers, and implementing, becoming more intentional with the various forms and cycles of feedback that the cohort provided, and the support and the coaching from just our coaches and Robin and everyone included with the Moving Up cohort is provided opportunity for me, like I said, become more intentional with how I provide feedback, with a collective effort with my teachers as we not only see what's working well, but find opportunities to grow with our staff to improve for our students. So with the help of the cohort and the coaching, it's helping me grow as a leader, and I appreciate everything that has come from it, and I hope that the cohorts will continue, and I hope to still continue to be a part of it and grow as a leader myself. Thank you.
Ladies, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today. Does anyone have any questions of our participants?
Do you have the money to continue?
That's a very good question. Actually, this program has been funded through an SREB grant. The grant the grant cycle ends in December. So at this point, we are seeking funding for cohort 3.
But we do not have funding at this moment.
At this moment, we do not.
Oklahoma traditionally has to rely on the charity of others because we do not have the funds that are needed. This is the issue where, cuts have consequences. So we won't give up, though, and we will seek those funds because it matters for kids.
It does. It definitely does.
How many people has went through the program, and what is the funding level in the grant itself?
This is our second cohort. This cohort had 20 attend. The first cohort was 49. So we've had 69 people attend through this. With the grant, we ended up last year, Robin.
$160,000, and this year was $120,000.
So we've had $280,000 over the course of 2 years from the SREB grant go into this program.
That's the Southern Regional Education Board.
And this year we brought in a speaker, Peter DeWitt, and he did a fabulous job carrying our participants through the entire program with one central theme, which has been a huge takeaway for them as new leaders.
But we need a lot more training of
That's right.
educational leaders.
We do.
And it sounds like this provides that kind of training, but you've got only 49 of 500 or so school districts.
And more like 1,800, just the principal.
Yeah.
Right.
Not even assistant principals.
And the other area that's not even touched is business training.
It's true.
I know that's not part of this program, but business training would go a long way in terms of superintendents. It could save enormous amounts of money to have a really concerted effort of business training of superintendents.
Yes, sir, I agree. That physical piece is very important.
What was the time commitment, and how was the time, how much time was committed and to make the program work?
Well, ladies, how many hours did you spend with your coaches?
I probably spent.
Come close to the mic so it's picked up
Sorry,
for those who are listening.
I apologize. My coach came out each 9-week period, and she spent several hours in the building. We would Zoom, where we would a conference call online with the people that were in our smaller group, and we did that monthly, and then we met monthly for all-day training. And it was scary stepping away from my building for a full day, but it also, I think, empowered those leaders at those other levels to step up. It was well worth my time. I wish I could continue on, and we've actually kind of made plans, our group, to continue the collaborating periodically on our own time. Was it 100 hours? Okay.
So 100 hours were built into the structure, but what you actually spent outside of that structure was a lot more.
Oh,
Can
most
you say
definitely.
that into the mic? Would you just
Yes, we did spend more time, and it was time, our evening times, and we did a lot of reading. There were 2 books that we went through. There were numerous articles that were shared that we read, we commented on, we chatted about. There was a lot of time involved.
So over 100 hours then, just in the formal
ma'am.
kind of interaction, and then numerous hours of personal preparation or time after that. So-
Which would create interest, and then you would start looking up more. And so, yes, a lot of hours went into this.
So this model is really what we believe is something that can be sustainable, because we are building capacity within the leaders in buildings. I believe that is how we can lift outcomes and make for a climate in a school where great people want to teach and have a great impact.
Exactly.
All right.
Your questions?
Great.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ladies. I would also like to recognize Robin Anderson, as well as our partners in moving up cohort 2, Lisa Pryor of Edgetos, Donna Richardson and Sarah Hall of the University of Oklahoma's South Central Comprehensive Center, and our coaches, Linda Everett, Charlotte Jones, and Kathy Tabor.
Yay. Thank you, ladies. Would you stand so we can all see you? If you would just stand, those of you who have served in those described capacity. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent Hoffmeister, would you please join me at the podium for the presentation of certificates?
Okay.
Of our 20 cohort 2 participants, we don't have very many here today to receive a certificate, simply because it is the end of the school year and our principals and our assistant principals are wrapping up time with their students and their teachers today. But I would like to recognize those that are not in attendance today as well. So not joining us today is Joy Kaywood, Assistant Principal at Stillwater, Jennifer Cutler, Assistant Principal at Newcastle, Becky Dyson, Assistant Principal and Instructional Coach at Highland Park Elementary in Stillwater, Alicia Ebers, Principal and Reading Specialist at White Rock, Brandy Green, Assistant Principal in Stillwater, Kristen Hennis, Principal at Oak Crest Elementary in Broken Arrow, Annie Keene, Assistant Principal at Bethel High School. And joining us today, Allison Lindsay, Assistant Principal, Heronville Elementary, here in Oklahoma City.
Right here in the middle. Okay. Let's get you in the middle. Okay. Let's do this. That way you can be a part of this too. Okay. Thank you. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also not in attendance today, Lisa Marshall, Principal at Barnsdale Elementary, Jackie Mitz, Assistant Principal at Stillwater, Christina Maralt, Assistant Principal, Ponca City High School. Joining us today is Kurt Myers. He is the Assistant Principal at Pioneer High School in Wacomas and soon to be the Principal at Luther Middle School. Also not joining us today, Cami Pitskowski, Assistant Principal at Stillwater, Dane Salaska, Assistant Principal, Westwood Elementary, Stillwater, Stephanie Patillo, Orvis Reisner Elementary in Edmond, Valerie Sauls, Assistant Principal, Yukon Middle School. Joining us today, Stacy Story, Assistant Principal, Yukon Middle School. And not able to attend today, Randy Stowe, Assistant Principal at Yukon Middle School, and Carl Treat, Assistant Principal in Stillwater. Thank you very much. Superintendent and honorable board members, it has been an honor to share the Moving Up program with you today, as well as, oh, and I forgot 2 of our speakers. That's not good. Superintendent, I apologize. We also have Karen Mock from Heronville Elementary in Oklahoma City. That's what happens when I do it. Fuck, I had to Thank you. And Miss Tasha Beatty, Assistant Principal at Bristow High School. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes, sir.
And it has to do with the selection process. How are folks selected for this? And why are they all from Stillwater and Oklahoma City?
Well, with our second cohort, our first cohort was in Oklahoma City, and so all of the applicants that came in, since they did have to drive the distance and they had to drive monthly, they were selected from that regional area in Oklahoma City. Our second cohort was in Stillwater, so again we had that group of people that were in those areas, but we had people from Yukon and Newcastle and Broken Arrow who were also interested, so they also were part of the cohort, even though they had to drive a little bit further. Our hope was to continue the cohorts and to keep moving regionally around the state. That was our hope. And again, with funding in the future, what we would like to do is continue this and move to different areas, such as the western part of the state, the southwestern part with Lawton, and of course the eastern part of the state.
Let me make a suggestion too.
Please.
If you monitor the progress of the schools that are the participants of this and see progress in the schools that people participated, it will make it much, much easier to be able to expand the program in the future.
That's what we're hoping. Word of mouth is an amazing thing.
Well, but the data
Yes.
will convince maybe legislators or somebody to be able to expand the program.
Yes, we're hoping.
And it also is one piece of the leadership building, because Lead to Succeed is for those aspiring superintendents. So it is a district level cohort, and we look at how that is moving around the state as well. So this is something, I believe we are in our fourth cohort. We'll be starting our fourth cohort of that. It is a 15-month, very in-depth process. In other states, they receive PhD credit. So it's very rigorous. It's a different level of participation as well. And it makes for a commitment that is not easy to commit to, frankly. And so that is the other piece beyond funding. But this is what we believe will really change the landscape of our leadership cohort as a whole, as a statewide leadership cohort each year as we have new leaders. It's very important that we provide this. Obviously, it is only a small fraction of those who need this kind of support.
And it's not a bad idea to, if this has been done in other states for a number of years, it's really easy to assemble the data of the progress in other states of the people that have participated.
The research already exists. This is a situation where, just like in the field of medicine, you already have the knowledge that here's the cure or here's the procedure. It is about removing barriers to make that possible for all districts, and it impacts our children. So we have made that plea, and this is something that we can only do as we have the funding. We were saddened that this funding was not going to be renewed yet by SREB, but we will find another way. So thank you.
Thank you.
You made a comment about other states' PhD credit.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't we have that?
Well, you have to have the ability at higher ed to give that credit where they can't receive. It's part of a program, right, for getting your doctorate, and other states have more robust funding for higher education. All right. Thank you. Now, we are almost to the let's see, item 9 is government affairs legislative update as we have wrapped up this legislative session. Carolyn Thompson, Chief of Government Affairs, will now present to you an update before we move into our legal presentation.
Good morning, Superintendent and honorable members of the board. I'm pleased to give you a wrap-up of bills, kind of some highlights that happened this legislative session that are affecting education. I still find it hard to believe that actually tomorrow would be the constitutional deadline for the legislature to sine die, and they did so 3 weeks early, just about on May 4th. So I still find it somewhat hard to believe that we're in this position today, yet I'm not complaining. I know that the board and the superintendent always enjoy seeing some of these statistics. We started this legislative session with both the bills that remained alive from last session carrying over and new bills that were introduced this session for a total bills of 4,761 bills. Of those, this year, 370 were acted upon by the governor. And of those 370, 83 or 22% affect education or our agency in some way, and that is about on par with what we've seen in past years. It's typically somewhere in the range of a quarter of all the bills have some sort of impact or connection to education. So I want to just give you a brief overview, and this has been already discussed even a little bit today, of the budget that education received. We will do a much more in-depth presentation in June when we actually bring the budget to you for your review and approval. But just a few highlights here. So the legislature passed the education budget before April 1st, which is only the second time that has happened since that deadline was put into place in 2003. The total education budget for FY19 is just over $2.9 billion, including more than a $480 million increase. Largely, that increase was put into the state aid funding formula to pay for the teacher and support staff raises, which you can see here on the first bullet. Total cost of $422.3 million, broken down into cost for the raises there at basically 404, and then leaving some additional funding for operations in the formula at $18.3 million. Our budget this year will also see the restoration of the line item for textbooks, $33 million, which we have talked about extensively both with this board and with the legislature about the need to have the direct funding for those materials. An increase of over $24 million to fund the health insurance for certified employees and support staff. The public school activities line item, which has helped support some of the leadership programs that we've just talked about, will remain flat. This is actually flat after the 0.66 across the board cuts that were handed down to agencies in February after the step up, the initial revenue raising plan. I shouldn't say initial, there were a couple of before that, but step up plan failed in February. The legislature had to act proactively to be able to balance the budget and passed small cuts for all agencies. Even so, that total cut to that line item was $755,000. So you can see that would have well paid for our Moving Up program. So this line will continue to be a struggle to prioritize, and we'll definitely have deeper conversations about that at next month's board meeting. The agency did receive an increase primarily to pay for the pay raises that were given out in the state employee pay raise, which was also passed this session for all state employees across all agencies. So the portion that our agency received to help cover those raises is the $427.6 thousand that you see here on the screen. So then the last thing I'll just mention, which is always of extreme importance to districts, is that we did receive the ad valorem reimbursement and continues to rise dramatically every year. This is reimbursement to those districts who have something in their district that inhibits them from getting that property tax that they would have otherwise been able to receive on whether it be certain land or a facility of some sort. So they did receive that, and we do certainly expect that to be able to get to districts, I think by June 15th, which will be well before the end of the fiscal year, and will very much help with auditing and such and getting books closed out for the end of the fiscal year. So I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the pay raise. Just a reminder, you all probably know many of these details, but House Bill 1023 of the second special session was the teacher pay raise. It is an average raise of $6,100, and board members, you should have in your packets, and we'll make sure it's available online, a spreadsheet that shows the raises from top to bottom, what the new salary schedule is, and what the increase is at each level. So you'll see that that is $5,001 for a brand new teacher, and then $8,395 for a teacher with 25 plus years of experience and a doctorate degree. So averaged together is where we get the $6,100. So the total cost was $353.5 million. This does include a raise for every certified position in the school building except for the position of superintendent, for a total FTEs that would be receiving this raise of 49,418 individuals. Yes, sir.
Is this the new minimum schedule?
Correct. Next, there was also funding and a bill passed to provide pay raises to support employees in school districts, House Bill 1026. That raise is $1,250 per support employee with a total estimated cost of $50.5 million. Goes to all non-certified positions, total individuals or FTEs expected to be impacted, 34,471. So the work of this agency was to provide this information to the legislature so that they could provide the appropriate amount of funding to cover those costs. So we worked very closely with them to make sure that districts were going to be receiving what they needed. One of the bills that made this all possible, of course, that I'm sure you're familiar with, is House Bill 1010 of the second special session. All of the items that you see listed here on the screen will, or most all of them, will go into the General Revenue Fund and are not going into a specific fund dedicated for education, but obviously this bill enabled the raises that we just discussed to occur. And the language in this bill, House Bill 1010XX, or excuse me, the language in 1023 for the raises is connected to this bill and to the enactment of this bill. Some other revenue sources that were used to help support the pay raise increases that occurred this year. The first is House Bill 1011 of the second special session, which put a $17,000 cap on itemized deductions that can be claimed on a tax return. It's expected that that will produce $94 million for the state next year. And this also goes into the General Revenue Fund. And then two others that actually will go directly to education. House Bill 1019, which imposes sales tax or ensures there's sales tax for online marketplaces like Amazon, is expected to bring in $19.6 million next year and will go directly to the Education Reform Revolving Fund, also known as 1017. And then 20.5 for the next year and each year following. And then finally, House Bill 3375, which is known as the, quote, ball and dice bill, expanding certain types of gaming and casinos, is expected to bring in $24 million next year in money dedicated also to the 1017 fund. So these two new revenue streams into the 1017 fund will hopefully help to shore that up in future years. Okay. Next, moving on to some other issues. There were a couple of other bills that were passed dealing with school funding. Senate Bill 929 updates our special education definitions. These definitions had largely not been touched since the 80s, and many of the federal definitions had changed, and so this bill aligns our definitions with the federal definitions. We don't believe it'll have any impact on actual funding amounts, but it certainly will help with transparency and clarity in the data that we collect and what we know about our students. And then lastly here on the screen, Senate Bill 1398 and Senate Joint Resolution 70 allows for school districts to use the 5 mills that they collect from their for their building fund to be able to use those for operations. This has to be approved through a constitutional amendment that will go to a vote of the people presumably in November. SJR 70 will be that vote, and if SJR 70 does not pass, then Senate Bill 1398 will be null and void. So the two go hand in hand. This one has to go to a vote of the people. A couple of bills that will increase transparency around education data. The first is House Bill 2009, requires our agency to annually publish all pay increases for school personnel. So anytime that there is a change in pay for any individual in the schoolhouse, we'll be required to publish that in a report on our website annually. House Bill 2860 does a couple of different things. Requires the Department of Education, our agency, to publish school site expenditure data, which we are already in the process of doing and are piloting and working with districts to do this. This is also a requirement of federal law. So that will soon be available on the transparency website, and then requires districts to link to that transparency website from their homepage. And then requires also the transparency website to include the superintendent's salary and a breakdown of their benefits. That data is already available, but I think the intent of this bill is to make it in an easier to find format and actually put it on this site. It's available other places on our website, not on the transparency site. Okay.
Just a question on the previous slide, Carolyn. Requires SDE to annually publish all pay increases.
Is that, okay, there you got it.
School personnel, what's a school person?
Anybody in the schoolhouse, so not of this agency, but a teacher. It would actually include all increases on the minimum salary schedule. So every time a person moves up through a year.
It will include every single person employed by a school in the state of Oklahoma, because all certified and non-certified received pay raises.
So we have to publish that every time it occurs?
Yep.
Oh, that's bright.
Yep. So that's what we'll be doing when we could be, yes.
Back on those salaries.
Other things.
Does that include those step increases?
On this bill?
Are they still in here too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. It will be, we'll just add to the wealth of data for people to sort through.
Is a bonus considered salary?
I believe so. I'll have to look back at the exact definition that's in the bill, but I believe it is included. I believe it's all compensation.
It's compensation.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions on this? Okay, there were several bills dealing with teacher certification this year. The first of these is Senate Bill 980, which we worked on quite extensively, but is adding 2 new levels of certification that would be above the standard teacher certification. Those levels would be a lead teacher and a master teacher that would be available for teachers to apply to the state board, I can't remember State Board, State Department, to receive those certifications, and after they receive that certification, they're entitled to an additional 10 days on their contract and $3,000 for the lead certification and 15 days and $5,000 for the master certification. They have to meet a variety of qualifications and be approved to have that certification, also receive recommendation from their local board to receive that certification, and then they are requested to provide additional supports depending on the level back to the school district and the individuals, other teachers that work in the building. House Bill 3309 is an update to our teacher residency program. The term residency really doesn't accurately describe the program. Residency originally was intended to describe more of a program like you might have as a doctor when you were a resident. We don't really have that type of program anymore. What we do is more of an induction program where we work with teachers one-on-one in their first year, inducting them essentially into the profession. So this is really an update of terminology and laying the groundwork for future expansion on that program, cleaning up some of the old outdated language. House Bill 2933 is not only applicable to our agency, but is applicable to any agency that awards licenses and certifications, but requires a process for a one-time waiver of certification fees for applicants that are low income, meaning that they are receiving some other sort of assistance, TANF, Medicaid, or SNAP, and are below 140% of the poverty line. And each board must promulgate rules, so we'll be discussing that over the coming months. House Bill 3220 creates a new teacher certification for career tech teachers that are coming directly out of industry, individuals that have been in a field for an extensive time and are wanting to move into the career of teaching, providing a more smooth transition and pathway for them. Okay, next is a couple of workforce bills. Senate Bill 1171 creates a work-based learning program and sets a goal of having 20,000 registered apprenticeships and internships by 2020. And we're directed to work with several partner agencies to try to increase the number of apprenticeships and internships that are offered, and these will be registered with the Secretary of State.
Is there any funding for that? How does that work?
I think that there might be funding. I don't recall off the top of my head, but I know that was discussed. I believe that they did get, this office is created under the secretary, the education secretary, and I believe there might have been some funding set aside for them, but I'd have to double check.
But that's likely not something that's extended to us.
Yeah, we'll just be partnering to work together with them to ensure that all of the ones that we're aware of and are cultivating will be registered.
No,
I'm sorry.
No,
No, not at all.
Could be, but it's part of it. What's that?
We authorize businesses to do it, but they're not, are they any more likely to do it without any funding? That's what I'm trying to
I don't know that the businesses would receive funding,
Office
but
of
I think there's
Workforce
funding for the organization of the program within the Education Secretary's office. And there is a fee that goes along with this registration that will help support the activities of the Secretary of State's office. Any further questions on that one? House Bill 2911 adds to, or really just makes more specific in the ICAP language that students are to be exposed to military careers, apprenticeships, and career tech programs as part of going through the ICAP process. So it's really just a clarification bill. Okay, next, there are a couple of student safety bills. The first one here, and really the first two here, came as a result of a recent court case that just caused some doubt about what a teacher's role is in reporting abuse and neglect. And so we felt it was necessary to clarify that and worked with legislators to do so. So the first one here puts into Title 70, which is our, where primarily all of our education law exists, and didn't previously exist in Title 70, a requirement, express requirement, that teachers are to immediately report abuse and neglect. If the student is under the age of 18, that reporting goes to DHS, and over the age of 18 or 18 or over goes to directly to law enforcement. The second bill here, Senate Bill 1150, defines what type of abuse and neglect are required to be reported in a different portion of the law. So the two really go hand in hand. The other piece of this bill that was added late in the process is the requirement of notification of a threat made to the school to law enforcement. So this is precisely the sort of thing that was being discussed earlier today by this board, when a threat is made against a school that poses some sort of harm or danger, that's to be immediately reported to law enforcement. I think that there was some concern that sometimes schools desire to settle these things internally, but that law enforcement really ought to be involved. I think that was the sentiment behind the language.
Carolyn, for next session, if the person's mentally ill, referring to law enforcement is going to do no good.
Sure.
And maybe expanding jurisdiction of some of the mental health courts to allow some of the rural areas to be able to take somebody to a mental health court in Oklahoma City or Ardmore or whatever like that.
Certainly.
Might be a solution. I don't know. There's various possibilities. But just referring to law enforcement, that's great. But if they're mentally ill, law enforcement's going to throw up their hands and say they can't do anything.
Sure. This language, I think, was added with about 2 weeks or less left in the legislative session. It came as a request, I think, from a local sheriff to a legislator. I think that it's really just kind of dipping our toe in the water of what can and should be done. So there wasn't a tremendous amount of time to flesh out that language. But I definitely, is certainly an area that we can explore expanding and adding some detail to for
next
future.
session, I'm glad to help on that.
Wonderful. I might call you up on that. The last one here is Senate Bill 1517, which creates a trauma-informed care task force. This, again, isn't necessarily specific to education, but obviously affects education. Really is targeted at bringing all of the agencies that work with children who experience different sorts of trauma in their life and looking at resources and putting together even a guide or a handbook that can be shared with those agencies, those individuals that support these students with best practices and resources to share. So that work, I'm sure, will be underway soon. Okay, just a few more slides here, I think 2. We had several bills dealing with assessments. We've talked about these somewhat before. Senate Bill 1197 updates our performance band labels. So this is specifically talking about the labels of proficient, advanced, what used to be limited knowledge, and unsatisfactory, changing limited knowledge to be basic and changing unsatisfactory to be below basic, which more accurately reflects the cut scores that we've set and that we've been recognized for nationally. It more accurately coordinates with the meaning of our assessments today as we know them. These labels came as a recommendation from our TAC and align our scores with NAEP. So that was passed. And then Senate Bill 1190 similarly would have aligned the RSA program with our new standards and assessments, would have updated much of the language in the statute, ensuring that we were able to accurately communicate RSA results to students and parents. Unfortunately, this bill was vetoed by the governor, and so we will have to visit with our experts, as we've done all along the way, to figure out what the best next steps are in that case.
This has nothing to do with the RSA bill in terms of practice. This has everything to do with it being a valid and reliable tool. So it is currently not going to affect anything right now. We'll be back next legislative session with new leaders as we must insist that our results are valid and reliable.
Okay, the last bill here, House Bill 3221, is one that you will hear more about in the coming months. Directs the state board to adopt a timeline to transition all of our assessments to be online. We feel comfortable that this is an appropriate step to take given the success that we've had in recent years with our online assessments. And actually, currently, all of our assessments, with the exception of grades 3 through 5, are already online. So we will adopt a timeline to transition all of those assessments to be online, and that will come before this board. We believe that it will save the agency about $2.6 million over the life of our contract, and that it will help us to get results back to schools and parents even quicker. Also added into this bill is a requirement that our social studies standards include information about the celebration of Juneteenth, which is commemorating the emancipation of African Americans. Okay, lastly, there were some curriculum changes. First here is House Bill 3311, which requires that the content of the U.S. citizenship test be incorporated into our state academic standards for social studies. This work will be undertaken actually over the summer, and so we worked with legislators to make sure that was timed correctly so that there wasn't additional cost. And it also directs that there be a greater emphasis on civics in our U.S. history test, which is also in the process of being redeveloped. So this bill works nicely with the timing of what we're getting ready to undertake. Senate Bill 1370 allows for certain career tech courses to be used in place of a math credit for students that are on the core curriculum. So they have opted out of the college work-ready curriculum and are on the core curriculum units in order to graduate. The bill specifies that the course has to be a 1-year full-time 3-hour course leading to a credential, and those courses will be approved by the Career Tech Board. And then lastly here, Senate Joint Resolution 72 approved our computer science academic standards. So those will be in effect and in place for next school year, and you've received a presentation on that previously.
And just a reminder to the board on those computer science academic standards, we are one of only 3 or 4, maybe we are the 4th, only one of 3 actually. States who have academic standards for each grade level in computer science. So we've received some national recognition for that, and we thank our team who were very thoroughly working to bring Oklahoma into a position of real competitiveness and leadership, and have been asked to help guide in that process for other states.
Are there questions about anything or anything that I didn't cover that you might have heard about that had a question about? Okay, well, very good. Well, we'll see you next month for the budget.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, board members. Now we will ask Brad Clark to come and then entertain the possibility of moving into executive session.
We move into executive session.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, then let's go ahead and call the roll.
General Baxter?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Yes. All right, thank you. We will be moving into executive session at this time. Thank you for those who are guests today that may not be here when we return back. I hope you have a great day. Thank you.
Price?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
General Baxter?
Yes.
Superintendent Hoffmeister?
Yes. All right, thank you. Let the record show that during executive session, we had Lori Murphy of council in the meeting with us, and there were no decisions made of this board during that time. At this time, I'll turn this back over to Brad Clark.
And I'll ask Ms. Cheadle, apologize, did we take
Yes.
any action to come out?
We
call
did.
the roll?
We just
Okay,
did.
I'm
Yes.
sorry. At this time, it would be appropriate if there's any recommendation on items in executive session.
I move that we issue an emergency order summarily suspending the teaching certificate and certificate number of Cassandra White, James Hurley, Haley Smart, and Holly Morris.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. Any discussion or comments? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
General Baxter?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Superintendent Hoffmeister?
Yes. All right, motion carries. Is there another motion?
I move we reinstate the teaching certificate of Doug Ford.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
General Baxter?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Superintendent Hoffmeister?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Is there any other action? All right. Item number 11, new business. Seeing no new business, board members, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
And a second. All right, please call the roll.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
General Baxter?
Yes.
Superintendent Hoffmeister?
Yes. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.